I work in the workplace culture area when I'm doing my consulting business. And so we come in, we do an assessment, not an employee engagement survey, just to be clear. We're done with that. Let's move on. But a culture-specific assessment, and then help the leaders work through to an action plan. What happens many times, though, is when they get to that action plan, it's the implementation that's difficult. So, we've all done the assessment and drummed up the action plan. Many leaders, and I was guilty of this too, had binders.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is David Newman, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host Rexhen, and today's guest is Carol Ring, an award-winning executive coach, cultural strategist, and the founder of the Cultural Connection, where she helps mid-market companies align their workplace culture with business strategy to unlock growth, innovation, and retention. A former telecom executive and one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women, Carol brings a decade of operational leadership and real-world business acumen to her consulting work, helping leaders demystify the culture transformation process and drive measurable results. Through her proprietary 6-step Ignite framework, works with executives to identify cultural gaps, eliminate limiting values, and build high-performance environments that fuel both people and profit. And it's a pleasure for me to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Carol.
Thank you, Rexhen. I'm so happy to be here and to share some of my experiences.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure for us to have you on the show. Initially, one thing that I want to look into is when it comes to your beginnings as an executive coach, as a coach, what inspired you to become a coach and then start your own coaching business? What was the spark?
That's a great question, Rexhen, and I've done a lot of reflection on that one because the formal coaching business is not that old. However, when I look back at my leadership in the corporate world, actually, that was my management leadership style, was always coaching. So I feel like I've been coaching for decades. And really, it comes from what makes me my own North Star, right? Which is I really want people to reach their full potential. I think it's one of the saddest things in our world is to have people going into work every single day. I mean, the engagement statistics are terrible, right? Only, a quarter of employees are actually enjoying themselves at work. And yet we spend so much time in the workplace. And that to me is it's just sad, quite frankly. It's sad. And so I really have this passion for bringing more joy into the workplace and for helping people really reach their own potential. And so I think that has always driven me, even as a corporate leader, to have this coaching style. And then when I decided to leave the corporate world and go out and help many other people rather than just one organization, that really was a big part of it, is really about coaching people to their full potential.
And so thinking about the years that you put into this work, this line of work, throughout your experience and going through the coaching journey with your clients, what is it about the coaching journey that you find the most rewarding since you started doing this?
I think it's really helping people find clarity is a big piece of it, right? Usually when I start coaching them, they've got some challenge going on that they're trying to address. Maybe they've stepped into a new position, and so they're unsure about how to handle that. Maybe it's somebody who is perceived as being a problem child, and yet really they could be just a square peg in a round hole going on in the organization. Or it's somebody who is stuck and they can't get the company to grow. And so all of them are looking for some sort of clarity and some sort of almost like a silver bullet, right? Mm-hmm. What can I do to get myself to the next level? And I think when you enter into that relationship and then you see them move along and make great strides, I mean, it's wonderful to see that in other people, to see them moving forward and as I said, reaching that that potential that really is in there.
And when it comes to these executives and these leaders that you're working with, do they fit a specific profile? Is there an ideal client profile that you typically work with? How would you describe? Is there a certain demographic, certain industry? How would you describe that?
Right. So initially, the coaching work that I did came out of my consulting work. As you mentioned, I work in the workplace culture area when I'm doing my consulting business. And so we come in, we do an assessment, not an employee engagement survey, just to be clear. We're done with that. Let's move on. But a culture-specific assessment, and then help the leaders work through to an action plan. What happens many times, though, is when they get to that action plan, it's the implementation that's difficult. So, we've all done the assessment and drummed up the action plan. Many leaders, and I was guilty of this too, had binders of information, right, sitting on the back shelf, which we did nothing with. So it's that implementation piece that's so critical for those leaders. And so working with those leaders through that implementation was really sort of the genesis of my coaching. It fell out of that. So mid-market leaders, that's the space that I'm in. So typically a mid-market leader or a function or a unit within a larger organization is typically who I work with. So that is one stream of coaching that I go through. And the other one falls out of my desire to see more women in leadership positions. And so quite often I will work with directors or vice presidents who are female, who share some challenges that may be a little different than what some of the male leaders are perceiving, right? The glass ceiling is still there, unfortunately. And so I really like to give back in that way to work with those kinds of leaders as well, specifically. So typically our engagements are blocks of 6 months. Really, it takes that amount of time to work through some of the issues, gain some skills, put them into practice, that kind of work program. I always start off with personal values. It's something that I learned from a coach way back when that I have always found very powerful. My clients always tell me how powerful it is that when they start to understand their own personal values and recognize when they're misaligned with other people. And quite often that is a huge aha for them to go through that initial exercise that we go through. Then it becomes a little more customized depending on what the challenge is for them. Although I am also certified in the Leadership Challenge program. And if people are just looking to upskill leadership without a specific issue going on, we can use that program and go through the 5 leadership skill sets that are in that structure, in that framework as well.
Do you find that there is a marketing channel that is working really well for you right now?
So, Rexhen, this is where there are some lessons that have been learned, and I must say. And I think the real secret and where I am finding success is to really be niched, to really know who you're going after. I mean, when I say mid-market leaders, there's, thousands of them out there. And so the more niche that you can be, I think the easier it is to find clients. So for example, I use networking as a good way to find clients. And so I am members of my local Chamber of Commerce, many chambers of commerce that I would say, because quite often that's where my demographic market is there. Mm-hmm. So I'm niching by mid-market, by geography in that way. Another networking technique I have is, as I mentioned, I really love to serve women leaders. And so going into women's organizations, women in communications and technology, or other associations that are trying to provide leadership skills for their audiences. And so being able to network into those associations is like a great pool of potential clients who are looking for my kind of services.
Do you have the specific goals looking into 1 to 3 years into the future? Is there any specific goal that you're working towards with your coaching business?
I think I do not have group coaching yet. And I think that would be something nice to add in there. I see there's lots of benefits for peer networking and peer work for the leaders that I'm serving. And so I think there's a good growth aspect for me in the group coaching area.
Do you see any challenge in doing so?
Time, there's always time, right? I'm not exclusively coaching. I'm doing consulting as well. And I love going into organizations and helping them turn that organization around. I did it myself when I was in the corporate world. And so I bring that kind of experience to those leaders, and I love to do that work as well. So it's finding that balance between the consulting work and the coaching work as I try to grow and scale and see where the next level of my business might get to. I think it's a challenge to balance. For me, thinking about that group coaching aspect, I love working one-on-one with my clients, especially if they're a new leader. Let's take that as an example. They're a new leader in a position. Their challenge is very specific. In a group coaching situation, I'd like to make sure they were in a group of somebody who perhaps recently had gone through that same experience, who could share it. And so trying to create the right groups for the maximum effect, I think, is something I'm still trying to work through.
And when you say the right groups, is it just like you want to figure out what groups would go very well together in terms of like energy and like collaboration?
Right. I mean, there are many peer-to-peer kind of networking groups out there, right, which sort of offer that kind of self-coaching, peer coaching type of dynamic. And they're trying to find leaders from similar sized companies, but different industries that they can share experiences with. I think when it comes to coaching, though, I mean, that's more of a business growth type of environment where you're trying to grow yourself personally and individual development. I think it's a different environment. And I think that's why people want to have coaching, because they know it's that safe zone where they can share things that they can't share in the workplace. That third party unbiased outside the organization, outside the industry that they can talk to. And so trying to preserve that, because that's what they're really looking for, but still give them that peer ability to grow is important. And so trying to work through that, I guess, is where I'm at.
Has there been any investment that you feel like was a very good investment, good return on it, either an investment on yourself, on the coaching business, such as coaching programs, masterminds, communities, or things like that? Has there been any investment like that you feel like, oh, that actually was a very good investment? And has there also been bad investments, or like investments you wish you had avoided?
Right. So I would say there's been two really good investments that I've made. One is being certified under the Leadership Challenge program. I think, having a framework or having something that's structured is a good tool to have in your toolkit. I had a client who was actually using that program, and so I got to experience it a bit before I made the choice about which one to work with, but it aligns very well with my values-based consulting work. So I think that was a great match. It was a great alignment to the work that I'm doing. And the other one is that I have a sales and marketing coach. And I think that has really benefited me, David Newman from Do It Marketing. And that has been a great investment that really jumped my business dramatically working with his program. And so, I'm not a born salesperson. The last thing I really want to do is sales. Mm-hmm. But I no longer see it that way. I no longer feel that way about it. And it was a great investment for my program, for my work.
Are you thinking like growing more exponentially, or?
Not sure about exponentially. Growth, yes. But in my case, it's not a sole coaching business. It's consulting and coaching. And quite frankly, the consulting drives better revenues for me and versus the coaching. However, I do love the coaching. So I do love working with those individuals and seeing them just grow and achieve great, wonderful things. And so, that's kind of where I'm going to sit for the next few years, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol. It's been great so far. The final question for me is, what advice would you like to give to other coaches that are looking to scale their impact?
Yeah, I think there are many ways to provide impact, and it can be one-on-one coaching. It can also be writing books, writing articles, public speaking. I mean, there are many ways to get out there. I speak from the platform. I do keynote speaking as well, not just because I'm trying to drive clients, but because I'm really trying to make that impact out there. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage people not to see the actual act of coaching as being the only way that they can make impact. That there are other channels, other venues out there, and you never know who you're touching when you're doing that kind of work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for sharing all of this. And thank you so much for coming to our podcast and taking time to have this interview today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or reach out to you, they can go into LinkedIn and look up Carol Ring, and they will be able to find your profile. They can also go to the website carolring.ca for Canada. They'll also be able to find your website there. Is there any other way that they could connect with you?
Those are probably the two best ways, but if you want to email me right away, just go to carol@carolring.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for coming today.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.